And a great webinar tonight. I teach elementary physical education.
Thanks so much. Logan?
Hi, I'm Logan Okita. I teach first grade in Honolulu. I am one of the TLI coaches from Hawaii.
Thanks so much. And is that a green screen behind you showing us beautiful ocean?
It is. Otherwise, you'd have to look at my dirty and frame. So it's a little bit nicer view.
That is a great idea. I could do that maybe next time. All right. And then let's go to Jen.
Hi, I'm Jennifer from NEA. Are you talking about, is there Jen?
There actually is another Jen. If you want to go ahead. So this is one of our special guests. This is Jennifer from NEA. And if you want to talk a little bit for just a minute about yourself, and then I'll move to Jen Cooper.
All right. So I'm Jennifer from NEA, and I've been working on the TLI since it was an idea. So it's always really rewarding for me to get to meet the fellows on workshops or maybe in your state. So excited to learn from you tonight.
Thanks so much. And Jen Cooper, do you want to introduce yourself?
Hi, I'm Jen Cooper. I teach technology classes at Legacy High School here in Broomfield, Colorado, and I'm a coach for Colorado.
Awesome. Thanks so much. And then Jana, I see that you joined.
Hi, my name is Jana Bjork, and I am a teacher in Iowa. I teach second grade and also serving as a coach this year.
Awesome. Thanks so much. Okay, well, let's go ahead and get started. I'm going to share my screen so we have our slide deck in front of us. And just so everybody knows, I have another screen behind the one that I'm looking at that has the chat box and some other things. So if I look like I'm looking over your heads, I'm paying attention. I'm just looking over there. So, so that you don't think that's weird. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. And we'll go ahead and get started. So tonight's workshop is all about Module 2, which is design thinking. And we're going to be working through some ideas to get you started on design thinking and get you started with your capstone projects tonight. So we really want to make sure that our leaders, which is you all, have a good sense of vision and purpose that drives what you decide to do, and is grounded in personal reflection and an assessment of human needs. So we're going to try to take you through some steps that'll help you get there. All right, we're going to be doing a bunch of work first on design thinking, and then we're going to move into breakout rooms to talk about diversity and bias. So we kind of have two different topics tonight that we'll be talking about. Some norms that we want to make sure that we go through. I've already asked everyone to rename yourselves 100 times, so I'll just leave that one up there. If you are stuck on renaming yourself, we can certainly try to help you with that. I definitely want to invite everyone to use the chat box. If you click on that little chat button at the bottom, a panel will appear. You'll be able to see what other people have said, and you'll be able to respond. And there'll be lots of opportunities for you to get involved in some conversations tonight. We will start and end on time, so that's what we've already started on time. We'll definitely end on time as well. I know it's late for some of you. It's definitely past my bedtime almost when we get done. Please mute your mic while you're not talking. Sometimes people forget to do that, and that's okay. I can mute from here, but it helps cut down on the feedback and some of the ambient noise, especially if you've got your kids at home or dogs barking, that kind of thing. And then, but remember, the trick is to unmute yourself when you do want to talk. So that everyone can hear you. You have the ability to turn off your video camera if you need to step away, and that way we know that you're not available at that moment, and then turn it back on. And then we just really ask that people stay engaged, to participate in the discussions, draw on the materials that you visited in the Module 2 work, chime in when you're invited to, and just participate in ways that you feel comfortable with. All right. So we're going to move into this quote, and I'm going to ask people to have conversation about this idea, and we can do that via the mic and also via the chat box. And my coaches, I'll just ask you to respond to folks in the chat box, and if you want to pipe up during a moment when the mic is free and share what some other people have thought, that'd be great too. There might be a couple of people on the call that are really just calling in from a phone, and they won't be able to see what's in the chat box. So the quote is this: on creativity and innovation, the old idea that creative people were individually creative and that it was individual ideas that were most impactful is making way for a new form of creativity. Now it's the ideas that emerge from networks that are most innovative. We as creative people have to understand how to participate in networks and how to create them. So I just invite everyone to think about what are some ways that this resonates with you. I'm gonna give some thinking time here. So if anybody wants to chime in, just unmute your mic. You can do that by clicking, if you find your picture, and then you can click on the unmute button. Love to hear from you.
Hi, this is Ryan from Hawaii.
Hi, Ryan.
For me, I think with design thinking, a lot of people, they come into groups and they all have different specialties, different skills and strengths that they bring to the table. And when they all come together and share their ideas, then they're able to do more things than one person can do by themselves, because it's rare that one person knows everything about everything. So when you bring people together, they bring different strengths, different skills. I think you can accomplish more.
Thank you. I see Jill saying something similar too. She says, I find I am more creative when I'm talking to other people. And maybe that's part of, because of the strengths that they have, the experiences that they have as well. Anybody else want to unmute themselves and chime in?
Aloha, Dodi from Maui.
Hi.
When I heard this quote or reading it with you, I just immediately think of the work that I'm assisting in computer science. And in computer science, it's pair programming. So it's the same idea that they're trying to get individuals away from programming and partner people up to feed off each other's creativity, to spur new ideas. Because, it's sort of an obvious thing that maybe we've overlooked in the past, but there's more innovation and more minds than in one alone.
Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about the videos in a little bit, but that reminds me of if you watch the shopping cart video, that whole idea of coming from different disciplines and being able to share ideas that way. Anybody else want to unmute and share a thought?
Anna, I'll share.
Thanks.
I love that idea, and I had a yearbook deadline. I'm a high school English teacher, and we had a huge deadline today, and 2 kids just could not pull it together, and it was like the whole group that pulled around them and went into the interviews and went into the pictures so that we made the deadline. And it was that whole working in networks and how to participate and build each other up. I thought this quote just really resonated with what I saw today with my students. I also see that a lot in AP Seminar, where 2 of their performance tasks, really deal with working in groups. And man, when kids really can be innovative together and learn off each other, I just think that is the future.
Thank you so much. And that's definitely something that people talk about. Like if you've ever read Tony Wagner, he talks about what business people want, and that's the ability to collaborate and create out of collaboration.
I have a thought.
Yeah.
When it says the old idea, I'm reflecting more about the ability of the old idea to express what actually really was occurring. I think people probably did in the old idea look at it as individually, because you have prizes like the Nobel Prize and it names one person. But we all know that behind that one person was a whole bunch. So I think that the old idea was probably just inaccurately expressing, which had existed all the time, that multiple interactions create the most meaningful interactions. And then, then the one guy wins the Nobel Prize.
That's great. Like I really appreciate that insight. I think that's really an excellent point. And for people who have won awards like that, or like other kinds of awards, I mean, that's always the first thing that you think of is like, you know, who actually helped make that happen. Yeah. All right, great. And so we're going to talk a lot about what you all brought up there as we go through our work tonight. We're going to talk about design thinking and how do we create something based on a needs assessment that's going to meet the needs of human beings through conducting an assessment. In Module 2, you'll be working on that assessment. You're going to make some plans for improving something or in your context, in your environment, within your chosen overarching competencies, which I can't say apparently. We're going to also talk about leadership skills and growth and work on some of those personal biases and develop cultural competence. So tonight's work is going to be, I think I said this already, is going to be sort of two big parts. One is going to be about design thinking and the other is going to be about cultural competence and decreasing bias or identifying bias. The objectives for this workshop are to develop the skills that you're going to need when you are working on your capstone projects as far as design thinking goes. We're going to explore how you can use design thinking to develop needs assessments and design plans through ideation and experimentation phases. And then we're also going to, again, talk about personal bias. So it's sort of a 2/3, 1/3 kind of breakdown for the workshop tonight. So our agenda is to reflect on design thinking pre-work. So there were 2 videos and a website, and you could choose the things that you wanted to look at. We're going to talk about how you can use design thinking to develop your needs assessment and your leadership plans, reflect on the results of some of those bias tests, and talk about how those your personal bias might factor into your leadership. So to get started, we're going to look at this image, this graphic this is from the TED Talk, Tim Brown's TED Talk. So I think what I wanted to do is just talk a little bit about that and then see who had watched that TED Talk as their choice of the things to look at for the pre-work. We are not going to be doing a deep dive into design thinking, but we're going to look at some of the processes to reveal some more non-traditional ways of collecting data and developing some kind of an idea that you want to test out. We really want fellows to collect data from real users, from students, from teachers, and from parents or association members, whatever your kind of group is that you're going to be addressing. So real data and we'll give you some ideas for how to do that and design some solutions for them, as opposed to sort of addressing a problem that you think is in existence and creating a solution that you think would be good. So we want to ground all of our work in real data. So anybody who watched the TED Talk and recognizes this image, could you chime in and just tell us a little bit about what it meant, what he was talking about? So that's my wait time. But if you have a thought after the wait time, please interrupt me. So as you look at this graphic, consider how this is similar to or different from how problems are usually solved in schools. Creating choices and then deciding on those choices. Like, is that what you all have experienced in your own schools, or how do decisions usually happen in your schools?
With students, with exceptions, generally we want them to kind of repeat what we're telling them or what we're showing them. I was going to say the word regurgitate, but we say that a lot. And there's not a lot of creating of choices. I'm not saying in all schools all the time. There's definitely pockets of this sort of more innovative design concept, but traditionally it's been a lot of reflecting back what the teacher has shown you.
Yeah, that's a good point. And you can respond or someone else can, but is that kind of also how decisions get made from the administrative level down to the teacher level? Maybe not regurgitation, but I don't know. I'm hoping that some people work in schools that are a little bit different from that.
Well, in our school setting, we've had previous leadership that actually championed a lot of design thinking work and kind of led by the mantra or motto of the answers are in the room and let's come together and be collaborative about what needs to be done here. But currently we have new administration in the building and there's a big shift going on in terms of another compounding factor, and that is that our school's on turnaround status. So there's some urgency in creating a plan there where a lot of decisions seem to be mandated rather than facilitated. So definitely I've had the pleasure, so to speak, of working in a collaborative environment where design thinking is the channel through which, you know, processes are determined and decisions are made, but that's not the current status in our building at this time.
Thanks for that. Yeah. And you can see the difference, right? Like pretty big contrast.
Yeah, some parts of that are uncomfortable. It feels a little bit like it's just uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm.
It's different.
Mm-hmm. I thought I heard someone else also going to chime in.
I was going to say, I kind of feel like in my school in particular, we're very reactive so if a problem arises or something happens, we're just kind of reactive. We don't really, I don't think, innovate and change things and prevent those problems from happening again. So I'm kind of curious to hear about some of the innovation and stuff happening in other schools because I don't really see that.
Thanks for sharing that. Does anybody have, and well, let's see, I think we're going to get to that, but does anybody have an example of something like a different approach that maybe their school has championed to decision-making, problem-solving?
Karina from Conewaina High School, Big Island. One of the things that I noticed with my school is, this is my 5th year coming back to the school. When I first started, it seemed that everything was brought down to us from administration. This is our focus this year, do it, no questions. But in the last 2 years, administration has done a shift where they actually gather all the teachers and we all drafted our vision for our school together. So we went through that process, creating our own vision and mission. And then now we all agree that we are focusing on reading, writing, all of that stuff. But one of the new components that teachers and students felt that was needed was the mindset. So we're currently working on growth mindset, administration, teachers, all the way down to the students. And because all of us are in it together, I feel the community. I feel that the place that I come to work, everyone is together, which is so different from when I started here. And it reminds me of the video, right, where you have to go to the people. You have to ask them, like, what it is. Well, you have to get to know them and find out the need. And then from there, draft something that will help everyone. And I feel that that is what my school is currently doing. And so far, you can see it. You can feel it. We had our district come by and observe our classrooms. And that was the biggest feedback that we got, that all teachers are in it together. The students feel that teachers care about them and that they themselves can get smarter if they work at it.
That's amazing. And I love that the kids were involved in that conversation as well. So I know I don't have a graphic for this, but I want you to think about a shopping cart, picture a shopping cart in your mind. Those of you who watched the shopping cart video, anybody who watched that one, would you talk a little bit about their process? Because if people didn't watch it, you could summarize a little bit for them what that team went through to create what they were going to create. So anybody who watched that one?
Anna, I watched that one, and I thought that I just can't. I mean, I had to watch it a couple times. I think everyone should go back and watch that because it was kind of amazing their process. One of the things that struck me was just the whole, like I think it was day one or it might have been day two, but they had like this 9-hour, I can't remember what they called it, their brainstorming session, which was just, I can't remember. They did the deep dive and then did this brainstorming for like 9 hours where they were just like everything. It was such a diversion approach instead of saying, here's what's available, here's what we're confined with. It was just like no walls were the limits on that brainstorming. I thought that was really powerful.
I thought also during that part, they talked about the importance of having people from different disciplines. Like, I feel like they had a psychologist and like a, computer person, and I can't remember all the different disciplines, but they were really varied and they came together for this. And that was one of the biggest strengths I thought that they had as far as coming up with different ideas.
Yeah, I agree. And one of the other strengths I thought they had is they didn't confine things to a time limit. I feel so many times in the schools, like we just do that, the old way of thinking where we have a limited time, let's solve the problem with what resources we have, like check the box and move on, where they took so much time and at the end of that day they said, okay, we're done, let's go home, let's get refreshed, come back the next day. They weren't trying to solve it within, a limited time. And we're so time thirsty, I think, that sometimes we might miss the best solution because we're trying to do the quickest solution.
Yeah, I agree with that. So if you didn't watch either of the two videos, then hopefully this looks familiar to you. This is from the website, the Design Thinking for Education, or for educators. And this is kind of a nice, if you like linear things, it's kind of a nice little linear approach to thinking through the design process. So in this way, we're talking about figuring out what the challenge is using a needs assessment. That's almost number one, pre-discovery. And then how do we interpret what we have learned from our data or what our data is telling us? And then how do we move from there into creation? So we've heard a couple of examples of schools that do have a design process. Is there anybody else that has a good example? In the last workshop I did, there was even a teacher who teaches design process or design thinking. Is there anybody who has an experience like that could share it with everyone else?
Hi, everyone. My school is a community school, and we implemented community schools last year as myself, as a half-time coordinator. This year, I was luckily able to win through bargaining a full-time position plus monies for our parent-teacher home visit program. And so implementing community schools at my school, I completely didn't realize this till I saw this graphic in red. I went through this entire process without even realizing that I went through this process. And so in the needs assessment that I did, I had one-on-one conversations with members in my building and with students and with both our ESPs and our licensed staff, and kind of talked about what does your dream school look like? And it was a community school. And so now implementing some of these, policies and programming that is innovative for our schools specifically, because we are in turnaround as well. And so the sense of urgency and things that are top down has kind of clashed with community schools and the work that we're trying to do. But going through the design process and having shared leadership and everyone being on the same page, we're able now to kind of meld the two together and use what we're doing for community schools as a way to help alleviate some of our challenges that we're facing, both academically and socio-emotional for our students, and I'd say our staff too. And so utilizing this process, I didn't even realize I was doing so. And we're experimenting with different types of things like restorative practices, trying to lower our suspension rate and really trying to increase the learning. And so some of the strategies and some of the techniques that we're using we haven't used before. And one is having shared leadership where everyone has come to the table. We have stakeholders that from students to parents to our ESPs to our licensed staff to community members. who are all a part of creating our school. And that to me has been amazing and very innovative, especially for our district and quite frankly, our state. So I'm super excited for the work, and I'm so glad that going and having design process, it's been very helpful for me, I guess, right now, feeling a little isolated, and it helps me keep focused and knowing what I need to do and the steps I need to take, and going back to the needs assessment and trying to remember what it is that our students need, what it is that our staff needs, what does our community need. So
I love that you kind of point out the recursive nature of it, because I think that is what happens is you get to that 5, you know, you're looking to evolve it or to tweak it or whatever you need to do, and you kind of have to start back over at the beginning or somewhere in the middle to get to the next step. Anybody else have an example or a story about design thinking from their own schools?
I have an
Oh, sorry.
Go ahead, please.
My name's Hillary Guinea. I'm from Billings, Montana, and we have a curriculum throughout our school district called Project Lead the Way that we do with our students. It's a STEM curriculum, and we teach the design process to all our kiddos. K6, everyone gets it, and then 7 through 12, they take elective classes if they want to continue on. But it's been great to have the kids learn the design process and be able to apply that across the board. So
awesome. Project Lead the Way, huh?
Yes.
Thank you. Did I hear Charles?
Yeah, I was going to say I have kind of like a little process that we worked just recently in my participation of democracy class. We were talking about advocacy. So there was a particular issue. It really doesn't matter. The stages will be about the same. But there was a particular issue, and the kids talked about how they would handle it and what they felt they knew. And I suggested to them that sometimes I tell my own kid that if you don't know, you should ask. And sometimes there's history that might adjust what you might think you know. So after they came through all their ideas for this advocacy project, then we talked about some other types of histories that would play into them discovering for themselves, a little bit dialectically, that maybe their interpretation, stage 2, was incorrect because they hadn't done enough discovery. And so it was nice to see them change their opinions on what they had felt rather strongly about to almost the absolute opposite end of the spectrum, because they understood we don't know enough. So I think that discovery lends so much credence to whether you really feel validity in your interpretation.
I think that's a really good point. And we're going to actually talk about that when we get to sort of the next little piece here, because we want to make sure that what we think we're seeing is really what we're seeing, or what we want to see isn't necessarily coloring what we're trying to get to. So if you kind of put these two together, these are the two images that from the design thinking materials. What would be interesting? What is interesting to you about design thinking, and how is it different from the way that education, well, except for the awesome examples that we heard, but maybe status quo education systems typically work? So what's interesting to you, and how is it different?
I think if I look at the first illustration, I think sometimes the decisions that are made at the governmental level kind of flip this, where we're given one mandate, and then it's our job to kind of diverge that and create choices for our students. We're not allowed to make the choices in a lot of instances, so then we have to kind of take that and flip it to give our students what's best.
Yeah, thank you. Other thoughts about the elements of design thinking and how it's different from what we normally do in schools?
There was a little video on that design, I can't remember that website, but the one, the graphs on the bottom.
Mm-hmm.
On the front page, there was like 3 short videos. One was from a principal, one was from an elementary teacher, and then another teacher. And the elementary teacher one I thought was really interesting, where he showed how he let the students design the room. He said they live here, and so what it occurred to him, instead of him making the elementary room design, he asked the students where they wanted the, you know, all the different elements to be. And I thought that was a really good example of design thinking.
Thank you. Any other thoughts? While you're thinking, I just want to say I can see a couple of thoughts in the chat box. Charles said design theory seems to personalize learning, giving stakeholders ownership, which I think is what we just heard someone else say. And somebody else is making a comparison to problem-based learning or project-based learning, PBL. I think that's a really good analogy to make as well. So I'm gonna, I forgot to introduce someone, and I'm gonna ask her to comment. She's been a little bit active in the chat box here, but this is Lori Nazarino from Colorado, and she's from CTQ, and design thinking is her thing. So I'm gonna let her sort of summarize or add to any ideas that she heard during the last few minutes. Lori.
Thanks, Anna. Hi, everybody. It's a joy and a pleasure to be here for sure. Trying to lurk behind the curtain a little bit. But design, when I discovered design thinking, it kind of blew my mind and changed my world, and especially the way I thought about my leadership and how I approach trying to solve problems. I frequently refer to design thinking as kind of action research, but with empathy data. And I think, you know, it's been mentioned several times already, and it can't be mentioned too many times, that one of the key things that really opened my mind around design thinking was the fact that and something to consider for your leadership is that you are looking to solve a problem based on what the people who are in that problem want and need. So often, you know, decisions and ideas and solutions get pushed down from somebody else to us, and then we push those down to, and we do the same thing to students. And so design thinking helps us open up our mind about, okay, and my example that I always use was, I had this group of boys in the back of my science class who, when I switched from high school to elementary school, who just really weren't interested in my science lesson. And I never bothered to ask them what was going on and why they weren't interested, because 10-year-old boys should be interested in science. So, and are interested in science if you present it in a way that's interesting to them. So this idea of design thinking, designing solutions around the needs and the desires and what resonates with the user, not with you as the leader, if you will. And then one other thing that got mentioned earlier that I don't think I heard here was this idea of, instead of trying a big thing out all year long, think about, how do I pick one small, I take my best guess about what this group of people want, and then I try something, I try it for 4 weeks or 6 weeks, a real quick cycle, so that I can go, oh, that worked, I'm going to continue that. Or that didn't work, but this part did. So then you can iterate, and over a bunch of those short cycles, you can get to a solution that works. The way we typically do this in education is, we try this big project, we try it all year long, and then discover it doesn't work, and then go on and try something else, instead of just iterating to a solution that works. So, but great work. Clearly you have lots of experts in the room, so be sure that you rely on each other's experience and expertise to move yourself forward as you learn to or refine how you implement design thinking, both in your classroom and with TLI, and how you work with other adults. So thanks for the opportunity, Anna.
Thanks, Lori.
All right.
So we're going to talk a little bit about, Lori mentioned empathy data. We're going to talk a little bit about what that means and what it can mean for you as you start to think about your capstone projects. So, you know, we want you to start with human needs, with people, with the people surrounding the area that you're interested in, whether those are teachers, students, parents, or other stakeholders, you could say. And so, you know, as opposed to, say, a test score. So I just want to open it up for just a minute to ask, what are your thoughts? What are fellows' thoughts on the concept of starting with human needs? And is that something that we're used to doing, or something that is new and different?
I'd like to say something.
Yes, please.
Okay, this is Lisa Jorgensen, and looking at the last graphic, I have trouble looking at it from a school direction because we have top-down leadership from all levels. But what I was seeing as a primary education teacher is the movement of a healthy group of children, which is, as you have multiple classrooms heading out to recess, you have this divergence where they're all heading off in different directions, but then you have this convergence as they're moving into their healthy relationships. And I would like to think that as we are looking at these creative problem solving through collaboration, is that it actually is a healthy movement towards solving problems.
I like that. I mean, just sort of almost like a bird's eye view of what we're doing.
I'm concrete.
I like it. Other thoughts about the idea of starting with human needs rather than some other, like she said, top-down need?
So this reminds me a little bit of my school. We teach international baccalaureate curriculum, and each unit, every topic, everything is always stems from the students' inquiries and what the students want to learn. But a lot of it is really their needs, what they need to know, what they're feeling. So it seems a little bit familiar, some of the questions that come out of the students, what their needs are.
Mm-hmm. I'll share one thing. I'm not supposed to talk too much, but as the grants manager in my district, I wrote a grant last summer for a mental health counselor and for safety, like a crisis intervention team, because our school has two big problems. One is we are located we're sort of, I think, emerging from a suicide cluster over about 18 months in our community. And when I say community, it's bigger than just my town, but certainly people who know each other. And then we also don't have any safety protocols in place. And, with every school shooting, I'm reminded, we have no idea what kind of thing would happen. But definitely with the mental health needs of our kids, that was one of the reasons that I wrote that grant. And without even thinking about it, I started with human needs. This is what I know our kids need. Now, did I actually collect data the way that we're suggesting that you do? No, I did not do that. So I could definitely learn from this process as well. But it was something that was definitely on my mind when I developed that plan. So when we go into this process of creating a needs assessment, here are some suggestions for how to collect empathy data. So the first one, and I'll go through each one and talk a little bit about it, and then ask if anybody can think of an example of how this might actually work with something that you're interested in doing for your project. So the first one is immersing yourself, immersion. So for example, if you're designing for students, maybe you want to experience the thing being redesigned from their perspective, such as by going through a day as a student in your school. What do they see? What do they not see? What do they experience for 7 or 8 hours every day? Or go hang out on the playground where they hang out. See what it's really like from their perspective. If you're designing for parents, maybe you want to try experiencing parent activities from their perspective. Maybe you want to go to a school board meeting from a parent's perspective, or try to attend a parent-teacher conference. Some of you who are both parents and teachers have probably done that. And maybe if you're designing for teachers or administrators, you shadow them for a day or half a day and see really what kind of things that they go through. So can anybody think of an example where what you're interested in might actually be strengthened and enriched by immersing yourself in context? We'd love to hear from you either by unmuting yourself or sharing in the chat box.
I am currently working with the freshman class this year. I am one of the grade level head advisors, and the needs came up after Q1 that the 9th grade class was really struggling with academics and just overall behavior at the high school. And so what I did was I created a Google form to collect information about them, how they were doing. And the common theme was that they weren't used to having so much work at the high school. And I started doing a little bit of research for the 2 middle schools that they were coming from. And I was able to learn that the last semester of 8th grade, they focused on a research project for the whole semester. The kids, they don't do any homework, none of that. So I get the kids' perspective when now they come into the high school and every class, for the most part, is giving them homework. So now I hear those students' needs. I understand where they're coming from. I think my next step will be to go and visit the middle school and actually immerse myself in the 8th grade setting and take notes and see what type of assignments they're doing, maybe ask some of the teachers what their thoughts are, because I really want this class to graduate, and I know that 9th grade is really important. And so that's where I'm at the discovery section.
That's great. Yeah. And we'll talk about the next piece too, but your data collection might have also worked with this next piece, which is interviewing, because that's when you started talking about the Google form, I was thinking like that's kind of a form of interviewing. So the next piece is asking someone about their life. If you want to know about, for example, what kids are struggling with, you could talk to them, interviewing them about their best experiences and their worst experiences with the issue that's being addressed. Really getting to know somebody or several somebodies to try to discover some underlying themes could be really helpful. So is there anybody else that can think of something they're interested in that might benefit from the get to know someone approach?
Yeah, definitely some of the methods that you've already mentioned and Karina mentioned would work for one of my ideas, which is to develop a program, like an alternative learning program for the students who are at the highest risk of dropping out. Talking primarily about the special needs kids that are in the inclusion setting at my school in particular, who are really struggling to pass their classes, and collectively have this strong distaste for traditional academic structure. So I've seen a need to create a learning environment that is better suited for those kids. And this would be an excellent place to start, is actually collecting formalized data through the Google Forms and the interview process, so that we can collectively analyze their ideas and needs that way. So that would be great. And I like the idea of going through a day in their shoes too. And I was thinking about how I could do that and represent the diversity of special needs. So I would love to hear ideas about that if we ever get into like a brainstorm, or a way to portray what these kids go through to some of the other teachers, even, kids with ADHD that can't sit still, kids with autism spectrum disorder, kids with variety of issues. It would be so great to further develop that empathy and walk a mile in their shoes also, so to speak.
Along those lines, I'm just reading what Rhiannon wrote in the chat box that says empathy data would be easily collected during a parent-teacher home visit, especially when discussing the parents' hopes and dreams for their children. And that's a great example of asking someone, about their experiences and what they think and believe, and kind of what you were saying about, some parents don't have the best experiences with school, or maybe they don't really know how to advocate for their kids, and that might be a good way to get started there. Okay, the last one is visit unexpected places. And so in this one, you might think about where you could go. If you think out of the box of where you could go, that would help you think in new ways about the problem that you think exists. So for example, if you have you want to know how to move kids through a lunch line, you could go to an amusement park or movie theater and see how they do lines. If you want to know how to improve professional development, maybe you go to a sports or band practice and learn how those folks get feedback from their directors. Can anybody think of an example where visiting an unexpected place might actually result in new thinking about a problem?
I do have a rather specific example.
Yeah.
Well, I had, unfortunately, I had stage 4 larynx cancer. And there was a time when I couldn't speak. And not only was it problematic to communicate with people, but because I wasn't speaking, people actually thought my intellect was lesser. So they would talk slower to me or talk to me as if I were dumb. And I juxtapose that to some of the kids that come from foreign countries to our school, and particularly some of the Chuukese kids, where they're not only unable to communicate, but they're looked at as being intellectually less capable because of that language barrier. And I experienced it myself when I couldn't speak, and either people would speak very slowly to me, or they also assumed because I couldn't speak, they had a hearing problem, and they would end up yelling at me, and I'd be like, well, come on, I can hear, and I have a mind, I just can't talk. But now I can, so it's kind of nice.
Mm-hmm. So that helped you find empathy with kids in somewhat similar circumstances as you for communication. So once we have tried to find some of the, actually collecting some empathy data based in what human needs there might be surrounding us, we want to then interpret that data before we create a plan. One of the things that you want to avoid, it's like a little warning for you, is to try not to interpret or try not to start brainstorming ideas for solutions before you really interpret that data and build a prototype, because I think too often we propose solutions that are not really appropriate to the actual problem. I know that I'm guilty of trying to create something before I really understand why I'm doing it. And the other reason that you would want to do that is because if you're trying to justify your idea, if you need support from anyone, administration, funders, anything like that, you're going to need some solid data, and just collecting it and then not interpreting it isn't going to provide the support that you need for that.
Get a book, buddy.
So,
Or you could.
and then finally, we have ideation and experimentation phases, and that's going to be when you take.
Caleb, if you want to play for like 15 minutes in your room. You can.
We have someone who's not muted, so if you could mute yourself. We have the ideation part of this where we want to take something like a small version of the solution that we want to propose, kind of like what Lori was talking about, do a small scale experiment and see how well it works before we try something big, because for one thing, that's a lot less intimidating than trying something big. And then see how it goes and what kind of changes and tweaks you want to make. There's an experiment mixtape from the Stanford School in your core readings that you're going to be reviewing, and that'll help you also think about how to build a testable prototype. We also have the 3-phase model of needs assessment. So if you feel like you need more structure for creating your needs assessment, the link is here. And fellows, or coaches, I'm sorry, I sent you the wrong link earlier. And so I'm going to see if Lori, I think she provided the correct one in our earlier session. So if Lori could provide that link. So because I know that nobody can click on the one that you can see on your screen, but this is housed at the Department of Ed, and it might help provide a little bit more structure. We're only highlighting a small, tiny portion of design thinking in the TLI. They'll be doing a little bit more in the second session, or the second term, but just so you know, like there's more out there for sure if you're interested in it. And some of you may have even, because like I said earlier, some of you may have taught it, so you're more familiar with that. So, okay, well, everybody needs to take a deep breath because we're going to move into the other topic of our call tonight, and we are going to talk about diversity, cultural, or equity and cultural competence. So this is a continuation of what we talked about during Module 1, and also connects back to your bias tests. So we're actually going to work into some breakout rooms here in just a minute, but I want to just see what we're going to look at a little graphic here for a second, and I want to see if people have seen this graphic before, if you're familiar with it, and also what kinds of things that you can use to help you kind of develop yourselves as leaders, and as also possibly with your capstone projects. So this is the graphic, and it's called the cultural iceberg. So I want to give everybody just a minute to really look at it, especially if you haven't seen it before. Give your brains a chance to sort of wrap around our new topic here, and then we'll chime in with some thoughts about what this really means for us.
Anna?
Yes.
I lost the whole feed. I can't do chat room or anything. I tried going out and coming back in. What do I have to do? It just says we're waiting to join your meeting. It doesn't say anything.
Well, you are in. I can see.
I can see you, and I can see the graphic. It's only this big, and there's no chat stuff at the bottom that says, I don't know why it went away. It just turned off.
Oh,
so I went back into my
Jill,
Yeah?
this is Lori. I'm going to put some ideas in the chat box for you to try.
I can't get to the chat box.
Oh, I'm sorry. So in the upper right-hand corner on the screen, there are buttons for different types of views, like speaker view, and then there's a screen and a smaller little box.
Yes, the 4.
Yeah, so see if clicking that will get you.
I've tried all of them. I'm on the big square right now, and all it has is your name on it. And if I put the 4, then I get the 4 pictures of people. And if I click the little one, I can see a little tiny iceberg, but that's it. I can't get back in. I don't know what's wrong.
I tell you what, we're going to actually move into breakout rooms here in about 2 minutes. So I'll put you in a breakout room, and if it doesn't work, you can come back, and I'll be sitting in this room, and we can try to problem solve from there.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, so the cultural iceberg, I'd like to invite anyone to respond to it if there's anything that struck you about this. I see there's a comment in the chat box that says, I love this iceberg. It reminds me of the concept of success. What's visible versus what is not.
Mm-hmm.
More than what meets the eye. Dodie, would you mind unmuting yourself and just explaining your comment a little bit? You said that you have seen it before, but have a different take on, or saw a different take on it.
Yeah, I've seen this iceberg used in a variety of different situations, but this one's a little more comprehensive than the other graphics I've seen. And the part that really stood out to me in this one is the institutions of influence at the very bottom, which says the forces which create, define, and mold a culture's core values. So I thought that was really powerful, that this one kind of went beyond the iceberg and included like these forces that surround the iceberg that actually like create it.
Mm-hmm. Do you think, or does anybody think that one of those or some of those might be more impactful than others, or does it just depend on the person or the culture?
I think all of them come into play. Definitely influence based on the person and their background and their education. In Montana, we have Indian Education for All. And so we have an awareness, especially for stereotypes and media, and how that can really play a part on somebody's perspectives. And I think you can see both the good and the bad, like it acknowledges under core values, but also talking about overt racism as opposed to the explicit racism that can come up with the bad, and how education will help address those.
Thank you so much.
One thing I find interesting about the graphic is that it shows all institutions of influence, but they don't affect the observable behaviors and practices, which I think is a little bit incorrect, because I do think that a lot of these also affect our observable characteristics as well. And so I thought it was kind of interesting that they only choose to show the influence on the non-observable parts of the iceberg.
That's a good point. Well, now that we've had kind of a chance to sort of get ourselves shifted over from design thinking into diversity, equity, and cultural competence, I'm going to go ahead and break you into breakouts. We're going to have 4 breakout rooms, so there'll be 1 coach in each room, and the coaches should have some questions to think about or to help you think about. The questions are things like, what did you learn? And then we're going to be talking about your bias test. So what did you learn? What surprised you? What confused you? Or made you feel disturbed? What connection might the results have to the danger of a single story, which we talked about in Module 1? What might you expect your results to be a year from now? And what might this have looked like for you 5 years ago? And what might it look like 5 years from now? So that's a quick list, but your coaches have those questions. You don't have to remember them. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here and go back to where I can actually create the breakout rooms. And we're going to do this for about 20 minutes, and I'll see you on the other side. I'll give you a little wind up notice when there's a couple of minutes left. So it's going to take me just a second. Oops. Okay, I might have to do this by hand, so give me just a minute. I'll get there. And you'll all get an invitation to join a room. And hopefully I won't have to move any of my coaches. All right, you should have an invitation to join a room. Lisa, I put you in breakout room number 1. Or just, sorry, not Lisa, Jill, where did I put you? Oh, Jill, let's see, there you are over there. So I see you in my participants list, but I do not see you on my breakout rooms. And this happened to me another time. Oh, Mark, here you go. Breakout room number 1. Okay, so Jill, can you hear me? Okay, I can't hear you, but I can see you saying something, so I think you can hear me. So you are assigned to breakout room 4, and it says that you haven't joined, and what that means is you probably can't see it, because there's a little thing, there should be a little thing on your screen that says the host is inviting you to join a breakout room and there's a number and you have to click join. Do you see anything like that? Dang it. And there were 2 of you, and now there's, I think, only 1 of you. Oh, you appeared again. There's 2 of you again. Well, I tell you what, we can have our own little chat for a minute. I have to figure out how to, I have to figure out how to download the chat. But, well, no, you got it. Can you unmute yourself? You can't unmute yourself either? Okay, we can't have a chat. Well, I tell you what, you can hear me. So instead of chatting with you about all of this stuff and having a one-way conversation, I'm going to just go ahead and tell you what all needs to happen for the rest, you know, the part at the end, because it doesn't make sense for you to sit here for 20 minutes, okay? So I wonder if I can, no, you probably can't see it if I share my screen, can you? You can? Okay, let me see if I can share my screen while breakout rooms are happening. I'll just show you what's coming up right after the breakout rooms, and then you can say goodbye, unless you really want to hang out. So give me 1 second. I got to remember how to do this. And I should be able to see you on my other screen, so you can nod if you need to. Okay. Shoot, let me move this. Okay. Can you see that? Okay, so let me move to present mode and then move on. Okay, so after the breakout rooms are done, oops, I forgot to time them. I bet it's been like 3 minutes. Okay, after the breakout rooms are done, then you're going to go to the Module 2 post-workshop assignments. So there's some questions in the LMS, and you can see down here where the Module 2 assignments are going to be. There's a self-assessment, professional context assessment, and then you are going to design an action plan using the template. So they give you a template, and they ask you to connect it to your 2 overarching competencies that you've chosen. So all of that is in there, and I can actually show you the document when we're done with that. So before I skip to the next, I'm going to see if are you on board with me? Are you okay? Okay. And then after you're done with Module 2, you're going to get started on your Module 3 pre-work. So you're going to register for the workshop like you did for this one. You're going to be prepared to share and discuss that plan. And all of that work that I mentioned on the last slide, your coaches are going to be looking at. So you can ask them any questions that you might have. You're going to review some materials about culturally proficient instruction, and then there's going to be a check for understanding like usual. So before you leave and go to bed or whatever, you can, after we log off from here, you can log into your course in the LMS and then go ahead and complete the reflection for this workshop. So just like you did for the last one. Are you okay? Okay, cool. So then that's the question, Len. I don't know, I can't hear you if you have any questions. But so that's that. Let me see if I can show you some of the stuff in here. So this is the overarching competencies that you're going to be looking at. I think this is the template. So this is the post-workshop assignment, and it tells you exactly what you need to do. If you see this right here, it originally was worded in such a way that it made it sound like people had to do it twice. You don't have to do it twice. You're doing it once, but you're pulling in both of those competencies. You have a simple assessment, and then a little bit more about a professional context. And then you have the template is right here. So if you click on that, you'll see what you're going to be doing, and I can click on that for you too. Oh, I can't. Oh, you have to make a copy so that you're not writing on top of everybody else. They're going to have like 50 copies from me from doing this every time. So you can see that there's a template, and you're going to actually complete that. Does that make sense? Okay. And that is all found in the LMS. And if you're wondering about the competencies, I did pull this up. I forgot to show anybody else, but it's in this document. You can find this in the Ed Communities. I think it's on the sidebar there. And these are the 7 competencies. So they're yellow. So hopefully you've seen that before. All right, so I'm going to actually go back to this really quick and make sure I'm on the right page. Are you holding up something to show me? Oh, you have it. Oh, good job. Good job. All right. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen, go back to this, make sure all my stuff is in the right place. All right. Oh, look, I have 2 visions of you. I have a close-up of you and a not close-up of you. That's funny. All right. I think if you have any questions or problems, you could probably email your coach or anybody else that you're in contact with. And then this workshop is being recorded. So if you really wanted to watch the end of it, you could do that. And I think these chats are also uploaded. So if you needed to see stuff in the chat. I hope that's good. I'm sorry I can't take any questions from you. Should I do another workshop? You know, you're here and you're going to be counted as here. So I'm going to say not unless you think that you really missed a lot. Like if you feel like you missed a ton in that interim where you were trying to get back in and stuff, then yeah, but otherwise I think you probably got what you needed. Okay. So you can go ahead and click all of yourselves off if you want. No, I could hear everything. Okay, good. That's all you really needed. Okay, see you later. Thanks. Hi, Callie, you're back.
Yes, I'm sorry. I was on my phone and my phone died.
Oh, okay. Do you want to go back to your breakout room?
I would love to if that's possible. I'm sorry.
Let me see if I can. I don't know how to get you out and back in. Oh, wait. Here we go. Okay, you were in room 4.
With Hawaii.
Okay, let me put you back in room 4.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Jill, I don't know if you're intending to still be here, but you're still here. Welcome back. Welcome back, breakout room 2 and 1. Getting 3 and 4 back here shortly. All right. So I hope that was a productive, beneficial conversation. I know it can be awkward sometimes, difficult to have those conversations. I think it's important for everyone to be reflective and to really think about, how things that you may or may not recognize in yourself can actually come out and affect what you're doing. And so hopefully we'll be able to continue some of that. And so we're going to go ahead and I'm going to share my screen again. We're going to get to the end of the workshop here. I've just got a couple more slides, and this is going to be some information for you moving forward into Module 3. So I'm going to share my screen. And so after we're finished with this call, you're going to be going to the LMS, and you're going to complete, actually the third slide on here is to do the post-workshop reflection, and you want to do that first probably. But there's also some questions, some post-workshop questions for you to complete alongside of a self-assessment and a professional context assessment. And then you're going to be using a template to create your plan. And I'm going to show you all of that here in just a second. You're going to make sure that you do the plan with your 2 competencies in mind. It looks from this direction that you have to do it twice. You don't. So let me full screen here, and I'm going to go to the, so this is the Module 2 design. Module 2, which is the design module that we've just been through. And you can see that there are some assignments in here to conduct assessments. You're going to create a plan that combines both of your chosen competencies, like I said. Complete a simple assessment of yourself and your professional context, and you're going to respond to the prompts as well. And then down here we have a self-assessment and professional context assessment. But what I really want to show you is the template. And what's going to happen is you're going to go ahead and click on the template, and it's going to force you to make a copy. I've made several of these myself already. So you want to make a copy and then share it or keep it, and then you're going to need to share that in your ed communities with your coaches so that they can see what you've done and with others as well. So you can see that there's a template here, some instructions, and you're going to type right into that. So you've got your identify a need, describing the current reality, and describe the desired results to improve that context. So these boxes will expand as you go, and that's pretty much the extent of my knowledge on this part of it, because that's going to be something that you work alongside of your coaches on. One other thing I want to show you, and I know you all have this, but the competencies, what we're talking about is this. It's these yellow, this chart. Here, let me go up to the top of this thing. So right here you can see this is your chart. You've got your overarching competencies in yellow. So if you scroll down, I think this is a booklet that you have, but anyway, it's a PDF, and you can probably find it in the Ed Communities groups. And these are the 7 competencies: reflective practice, personal effectiveness, and so forth. So hopefully you know all about that already, and I'm just showing you something that you're already familiar with. All right, heading back over here to the slide deck. So you're going to work on those for post-workshop. And then to get ready for Module 3, you have some pre-work. Of course, you want to register for Module 3. You want to prepare to share your plan that you worked on at the end of Module 2. And then we have some more tools for you to learn more about cultural proficiency and take that check for understanding. And this is what I mentioned earlier. You're going to want to do the post-workshop reflection for this module. I highly recommend that you do it now before you forget what you were thinking or feeling or anything like that. And then you can just head off to bed or dinner, depending on where you are, I guess. And at this time, we just have a couple minutes left for some questions if anybody has any. And I'm going to unshare my screen so I can see what is happening.
Anna, I had a question. I actually looked at that to see what we're supposed to do after this. Are the goals things we want to learn for ourselves, or goals that are related to our competencies and how we want to move on on the progression?
So Shanna, I missed the whole middle of what you said because
Does that make sense? Are the goals for us, or
so I missed a lot of what you said. I think you're asking about goals, and I'm going to see if any of our coaches have an answer for you. They might have also heard you better. Logan or Mark or Jen or Jana, can you answer Shanna's question about the goals?
I couldn't understand. If you can type your question in the chat box, that would be super helpful. You cut out right in the middle.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All right, other questions while Shanna's typing? I think she might be still typing. So no other questions from anyone? Okay, I see. Are the goals for us, or are they related to how we want to progress on the competency rubric? I'm not actually sure which goals you mean, so I'm hoping that one of the coaches will chime in because I know you've been more closely aligned with what happens next. Can you, Shanna, maybe you can type which goals you mean, because they're not responding and I'm not exactly sure which piece you're talking about. Oh, Jen's typing. Oh, that, the assignment that I showed. Oh, I think that is for the, I think if you look back at it, you'll see, but I think those are talking about the actual action plan that you're wanting to make. So it's all of the above, but I think specific to the action plan. Does that make sense? Okay, so sorry, I'm like looking through my notes, goals. Okay, all right, good stuff. All right, well, I will hang around for a couple more minutes after 8:30, well, it's 8:30 my time after the half hour mark, if anyone has any questions. But if not, I think it's been productive. I know it's late for some of us, and I just really appreciate everybody hanging in there and participating as well as you did. And make sure you jump in and do that post-workshop reflection before you forget everything. So thanks to everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Want to stop the recording.